Toyota Land Cruiser Prado 150. The six-cylinder V-shaped gasoline engine for 4 liters is the flagship in the line. After restyling and equipping with the dual VVTi system, it offers the owner to curb the power of 282 horsepower. Before modernization, its prototype produced only 249 horsepower. It is not necessary to blame a powerful engine for serious problems. With careful care, timely maintenance, he will be able to overcome the mark of 400,000 kilometers, stumbling only once on the replacement of the chain in the interval between 250 and 300 TkM. If something can be seriously blamed on the flagship unit, it is gluttony. Fortunately, this more than pays off with minimal repair costs. At the same time, if the instruments show a flow rate of 10 100 kilometers along the highway, in reality this is all 13. The same is true with the city, to eat 25 liters per 100 in this mode, for him to spit once and not blush. Plus, the engine's greed for fuel complements the high vehicle tax. In general, the motor is good, but with all this, it still needs to be decided. 2TRFE is a small-sized 4-cylinder gasoline engine. Against the background of the 1GRFE, it does not seem serious, offering only 163 horsepower. Yes, it is less expensive in terms of fuel, but it turned out to be rather weak for such a large SUV. As a result, it is often necessary to squeeze the maximum out of it, which could not but affect the resource. If the approximate life of the new 2TRFE with a careful attitude is about 400,000 kilometers, then with aggressive operation this mileage can drop to 250 to 300,000. In terms of hardware, the unit is also quite trouble-free. If something causes problems for the owner, it is nozzles that are sensitive to fuel quality and attachments, among which the starter and generator turned out to be the weakest, or rather their bearings. The 3-liter turbo diesel 1KD FTV is also not amiss. The already named 400,000 kilometers is quite up to him, and at the same time fuel consumption will not cause a nervous tick. The cost of diesel fuel will be offset by the frequency of problems. Diesel will take its toll during repairs, especially if you start the most expensive thing, the fuel system. Both high-pressure fuel pumps and injectors cannot stand low-quality fuel, and by 120 TkM at least one of the above can fail with subsequent heavy financial losses. The 1KD FTV motors of the first years of production suffer from piston cracking due to the high brittleness of the metal. The resource of such an engine sometimes did not even reach 100,000 kilometers in 2013. By another revision of the pistons, the problem practically disappeared and only a few cases of breakdowns on early runs were felt. The turbine is also not called a strong side. The limit of its resource ranges from 200 to 250,000 kilometers as expected. The USR valve, clogged with soot, also turned out to be a vulnerable part. Every 50, 60 TkM, the intercooler should be cleaned along with the intake manifold. To avoid problems, owners flash the engine ECU to work without EGR. Chip tuning here is only for the benefit of the resource. The quiet 2.8-liter diesel engine marked 1GD FTV has been supplied to the Prado since 2015. The latest version of Euro 6 is literally crammed with various technologies to protect the environment. Despite being smaller than the noisier 1KD FTV, its torque is up by 25%, delivering 177 horsepower. However, the 1GD FTV resource is almost 2 times less compared to other engines, about 250,000 kilometers. The weak point of an environmentally obsessed diesel engine is again the injectors. Due to the increased sensitivity to fuel quality, they may refuse to work after 100 to 120,000. With the cooling system on one or another engine, everything was expected. Everyone has pumps, and the Prado did not bypass the disease. Antifreeze snot can be seen not only at the pump connectors, but also at the junctions of the pipes to the radiator. An SUV's drivetrain is one of its strengths and rarely poses a problem. With timely and proper maintenance, Aizen's automatic machines do not make themselves felt in a negative way. It is only important to prevent overheating and change the oil every 50 to 75,000 km. The 4-speed A340 A343F, which was supplied only to early versions of a low-power 2.7-liter gasoline engine, also has no questions about resource and unpretentiousness. What can we say about a simple 5-speed mechanics? Change the clutch every 200 km and pull the handle further. Cases of failure of the dispenser actuator are not among the most widespread diseases. This happens if you often use the Prado 150 for its direct off-road purpose with the active use of the center differential lock. Approximately the same can be said about the crosses of cart end shafts. All replacements and resources fit in with the timelines proposed by the regulations. But there are nuances that are worth discussing. For example, the sore spot of almost all Toyotas in the form of a knock in the steering column has not gone away and haunts Prado 150 owners when driving over bumps to this day. The total backlash in the connection of the lower shaft with the bearing and the spline connection leads to the appearance of extraneous noise. The problem is radically solved either by replacing the entire assembly or by collective farm modifications with the installation of an additional retaining ring. It's not worth sitting on steering rods and tips when the first knocks appear, at least until the mileage has exceeded 150,000 kilometers. A common occurrence for the Prado is the tilt of the body to the right. The service usually swaps the front springs. There is even an official bulletin on this matter. But sometimes the roll is created by the KDSS system active type anti-roll bars. This phenomenon is eliminated either by adjusting the pressure or by replacing the hydraulic cylinders. In order not to spend 50,000 rubles apiece, some owners throw out the skittish system and install conventional stabilizers, although it is better and easier to periodically change the fluid in the circuit. When buying a used TLC Prado 150 with rear air suspension, you will have to take into account that the system is sensitive to critical overloads. During intensive use with maximum loads, the compressor also often fails. The elementary signs of this problem are a long rise to a height or an unauthorized decrease in ground clearance during prolonged parking with the engine turned off. In order not to take risks in this regard, when buying a used Prado 150, you will have to check the operation of the system as it should. Otherwise, neither the suspension nor the steering of the owner's puzzles. Levers and shock absorbers calmly pass 150 to 200 km if you do not abuse the overcoming of the terrain at inadequate speeds. Even the stabilizer bushings hold 120 to 140 km. The greater the mass of the car, the more difficult it is to stop, but Japanese engineers do not think so. There are quite a few reproaches towards SUV brakes and in all aspects from insufficient efficiency to premature wear of brake pads and discs, where the former live for 15,000 kilometers, the latter for 50 to 70 kilometers. In terms of design and functionality, the Salon does not stand out from other Japanese. Everything is standard, convenient. At the same time, there are complaints about the finish. Plastic is sensitive to mechanical stress. After a couple of months, it looks scratched and worn, which catches the eye, especially in bright sun. A typical sore Prado 150 is weak handles of the climate control unit. Particular care should be taken to the right twist the passenger area. Inside it is hollow, and the stopper is weak, and when pressed hard, the button is easily sunk. Separately, the handle cannot be bought, only the entire block assembly. Fortunately, if you have time and desire, you can fix it yourself by disassembling the block and putting the broken cylinder in its place with glue. If we talk about the seats and the steering wheel, equipment is important here. After more than 100,000 kilometers, only premium leather will look beautiful. And so the upholstery of the seats, the steering wheel, as well as the silvery plastic inserts on the steering wheel and the handle of the box, after 30,000 kilometers, noticeably wear out. This will inevitably be misleading when assessing mileage on indirect grounds, and in fact, until the second restyling of 2017, mileage is not duplicated in any of the ECU units. In terms of electrics and electronics, Prado is a typical native of the land of the rising sun. That is, there are almost no problems, nothing breaks or burns without malicious intent. However, during long-term operation, there is a hole in the old woman. There are known cases of replacing the steering column cable with the accompaniment of the failure of the buttons on the steering wheel and the display of errors on the SRS unit. Squeaks in the Toyota cabin are already a common thing. Music in the cabin is usually created by explosive plastic on the center console or on the right below the windshield. To drive it away, sizing a plastic lining on the outside is required. The slack is sometimes given by the tailgate locks or the stroke limiter. The problem is solved by regular lubrication. You won't have to worry about the body and frame of the Prado 150. Only corrosion can spoil the impression, which on the frame looks like a completely normal phenomenon that does not lead to anything, and being on the hood it already causes justified indignation. Any small chips cause the metal to bleed, which is why dealers have to fix the misunderstanding under warranty. The paintwork, of course, is weak and easily scratched, which is especially noticeable on black cars, and by 100 TkM without restorative polishing, the Prado looks at all 200, shuffled, with slightly cloudy headlights. In conclusion, we can say that the Toyota Land Cruiser Prado 150, even in a used condition, is quite a decent solution for those who like to buy a quality SUV at a reasonable price. Of course, there are weak points, but even after 150,000 kilometers you can buy a car in good condition without fear of the imminent wear of any of the main units or corrosion of body panels, except for the hood. If you want to get maximum reliability from Cruisac and a minimum of hours spent in the service, then it is better to choose a 4-liter version without air suspension, but you will have to overpay at gas stations and to the treasury. I don't see much reason to dissuade diesels either. You just need to provide such a Prado with decent service and high-quality diesel fuel, and it's better to bypass a 3-liter diesel until 2013. It will be difficult to find a used Toyota Land Cruiser Prado 150 in good condition and with native mileage. It is also worth remembering that worthy options on the used car market do not stagnate for a long time, even with a noticeable revaluation. If the ad hangs for several weeks, then there is no point in going and checking it.